The mules are in the corral. Welcome to Mule Talk, and I'm Cindy K. Roberts, your host.
Okay, Meredith, of course, you don't need any introduction. You are the Mule Whisperer. I can't think of a better person to interview on National Mule Day, but you.
Yeah, and actually we should also say Happy Donkey Day today, too. Because they all should be appreciated, I think.
They should, but do donkeys have their own appreciation day?
Well, that's true, but I think they ought to be appreciated 365 days out of the year.
I
That's
agree.
just me.
No, I agree with you. I had a chance to watch that DVD on rock and roll. I truly enjoyed watching that. It was a little sad at times, and I did cry, but it really was a good film.
Well, thank you very much. And when I made that, I wanted to make sure that it would elicit the same kind of feelings that I felt when I was doing that, when I was going through all of that, because most of the documentaries that I watch are so clinical that I really don't enjoy documentaries. So I wanted to make one that would really tug at your heartstrings and help you to feel what I was feeling for that whole, well, it was a total of 10 years, only 1 year with rock, but I actually got almost 10 years with roll.
And one of the statements that you made in that film that I truly appreciated is that you said no single person can have all of the information or the know-how on their equine. So that's why it's important to keep a professional support team with you.
That's right. That's absolutely correct, because you always are learning. You know, it's a continual thing. And even people that are just, starting with these animals, they think about questions and things that maybe you don't think about, even if you've been with these animals for a long time, and so you can learn from everybody as far as I'm concerned. So the best thing to do is keep your mind open and learn to listen and, really learn to discuss things, in relationship with your long hairs, especially with long hairs. Horses can be forced into submission, but long hairs, when you get resistance from a long hairs, they have a reason for it. They have a very strong sense of self-preservation, and if you listen to them, they can actually keep you out of trouble. They're something, and we don't like that when we get into these altercations with them.
Right. Right.
As people, we want to think we can control everything, but that's not a really good way to approach things. And if I had thought that way when I was dealing with rock and roll, I never would have made it as far as I did. But, and especially with rock. I mean, they were both headed for the slaughterhouse. And, my friends had them for, about 8 months, and they could not deal with it. So they asked me, I said, well, they're going to the slaughterhouse if they don't come to you. And I said, well, I'll take a crack at it. And I wanted to get x-rays on Rock, and I asked my vet about it, but it was a case where they would have to anesthetize him and turn him upside down. And the way he was walking, I thought, well, they told me that they thought he had a hairline fracture on the pelvis. And I couldn't imagine putting 2,500 pounds upside down on that pelvis. And I thought, if there isn't any damage already, that's really bad. It's going to be even worse if they try to do that. So I thought, well, my postural training cannot do any harm at all. Teaching them to move in good posture is only going to make it better if that's even possible.
Oh, sure.
And so I went into shock after, we had to put him down and we did that necropsy, because that hip joint was absolutely shattered.
I saw
and
that.
Every tendon, every ligament was snapped in it. And the only thing that was holding it together was the ligament that held the femur in the socket joint and the musculature that I built around the joint. There was nothing else that could have done any good at all for him.
Wow.
But I actually got him sound for a whole year at the walk. You could see it when he trotted. I never could get rid of that. And he was going over poles too. But I got him sound at the walk, and he lasted for about a year before that ligament just let loose. But I thought, it would be a really good teaching tool if I could, preserve his skeleton. So I partnered with Colorado State University, and it took us a whole year, but they boiled those bones, and we got together too with the foundry that I've used with Robin Laws and the statues, the bronze statues that she's done for me. And he said, well, most of the time those skeletons have a prop at the neck and underneath the flanks to hold up the bones. And he said, well, wouldn't it be really cool if we could just run rebar through all those bones and make it freestanding? So that's what we did.
Okay.
And this skeleton that I have here at the ranch is just remarkable. And you can see all of the things that were wrong with rock, and, including the side bones, the ring bone, and, all of his joints and everything, even in the stifle joint and everything. And then we've got like little arrows pointing to these things that were wrong with him. He had teeth problems, abscesses in his teeth where his teeth were pulled. And we have a legend that explains all that underneath the statue.
Right.
And then we've got the whole story on the wall. And so it goes month by month by month, and you can actually see the training process, in its progression and how much good it's done. And that's kind of what I'm doing now with Chastity, the donkey, and Chastity's challenges on my Facebook page, and I post them under training on my website. The progression with this restraint that I use, the elbow pull, really makes a huge difference in their posture. Now, you can't use it the same way with horses as you do with the long ears, because the long ears will respect a hard tie, but a horse, if you put that thing on and try to tie it down, they'll come up against it and flip themselves over backwards. So we got to tie it up a little differently so it slips, but it still helps horses. And my theory is that, most people don't start riding these horses till they're 3-4 years old, and they let them go without any postural restraint like that. And running up and down hills does not mean that they're doing it in good posture. So you generally have 2 to 3 years of the animal doing what we do as humans, and that is moving out of good posture and stabilizing the joints and the muscles with asymmetrical development, because according to how they go by themselves, which is never an ideal posture.
Wow.
That's something we're not born with. That's something that we have to be taught, and so do they. And when you let them go for 2-3 years out of good posture, and then you start riding them and try to break that loose, it's kind of painful for them, because here they are. They're all developed. All of these elements in their joints and everything are kind of solidified that way. And so when you start trying to put them into good posture, and then you've got your own weight on their back, it doesn't work real well. And they end up being very stiff, and they brace against the bridle for a long time. Some people aren't balanced enough to ever get that when you're riding them. And that's why, I start right from the very beginning with the colts. I start them in the hourglass pattern and leading in good posture. And I don't hold the rope underneath their chin. I hold it so that it's loose, so they have self-carriage. And then I pay attention to walking straight lines, squaring them up at every halt. And I do it in an hourglass pattern because if you do it on the rail, or if all you do is straight lines and everything, it's not really straight. They're still compromised by what they see peripherally. If they've got a rail on one side and not on the other, they're going to lean away from the rail. And so that develops their muscles, with asymmetrical compromises with those elements closest to the bone. So it's really important, especially with animals that were as bad off as rock and roll, that we go ahead and like I said, I'll start the colts without my self-correcting restraint, the elbow pull. But if I'm starting an animal that's over 2 years old and has had 2 years of moving the wrong way, and they need to be held in good posture during the whole duration of the lesson. And you can't do that without this self-correcting restraint. And it's not in a rider's hands. A lot of people think it's draw reins. No, it's not. They think it's a jambone. No, it's not. It allows the animal free range of motion, except to raise their head so high that they invert their neck and their back. And that's when they start getting out of good posture.
Right.
But they can put their head all the way down and all the way to both sides. And they can raise it above the withers. A lot of people have accused me of tying their heads down and making peanut rollers out of them, but I don't like peanut rollers either. I think that's a really bad way to train, and it puts an animal totally on the forehand, and that's not good either.
Right.
This won't,
That's really good to know, because I'm really interested in that. I want to get my mule into, a better posture, a better frame, and so I'm going to move into that direction.
When you do that, Cindy, then they feel good. It's just like if somebody started teaching you how to walk in good posture, then all of a sudden you don't get all those aches and pains as you get older that normal people get from being asymmetrical in their development, and when you get really old, then you end up being all bent over and everything, and then you got more pains than you can shake a stick at.
Oh, yeah.
But if you get into good posture, then you start feeling good because your joints work properly the way they were designed, and there's no compromises and pressure against your internal organs, so they function correctly too. And that is true of your long ears and your horses, that they start feeling better and they know that you are making them feel that way. So they look forward to being with you. And then even if they're in a herd of their friends, because they look forward to being with you, they don't get herd bound. They want to go with you, and they don't mind at all. And if you treat everybody the same way and you don't show favoritism and everybody gets their lessons, and you reward everybody after you've taken the one out of the pen that you want to take out of the pen, you reward them with their crimped oats, and then you pass out the crimped oats to everybody that was polite enough to stay back. And then they don't run the fence while you're gone. They know that you're going to come back and they're going to get their turn. That's why mine are so good. And believe me, at this age, I am really glad that they are.
Good. On a lighter note, how are you celebrating National Mule Day?
I am doing the same thing I always do, which I gain absolute personal pleasure out of. And that is continuing to contact the people and look at the different groups on Facebook and see what people are saying. And when I can jump in there and help, I do. I'm a consummate obsessed remote mule trainer and people mule trainer. And I like to help people so that they will derive the same amount of pleasure out of their animals as I do from mine. We had a hell of a snowstorm here yesterday, and it snowed all night. So I've got a minimum crew here today, and we're kind of digging out. But all the animals are fine. They're put away in their usual manner, and they all have stalls and runs to be in. So that's okay, and everything's organized so we can get to them easily. We've got a couple of people that couldn't make it in because the snow was too deep. But I celebrate Mule Appreciation Day every day.
Good.
And I thought about what we were going to talk about today. And one of the things that I thought was really important, we call it National Mule Appreciation Day, and us mule people are so into our animals because that's just what mules and donkeys do to you. They bring out the best in people. And I think the people that own mules and donkeys are some of the nicest people I have ever met. And I do think that their long ears keep them in line, just like mine keep me in line.
Yes.
And that might be why, But one of our mule people that I was particularly impressed with was Deb Kidwell, who has a jackstock ranch in Martin, Tennessee. And in 2014, she wrote an article for Ben and Nita Tennyson's Western Mule magazine. And it's titled, "Yes, We Have No Mule Appreciation Day." Now, she is someone that is really meticulous about sourcing information. And she was working on her book, which is an introduction and writing about the fact from the minute George Washington's jackass royal disc hoof hit the ground in Gloucester, Massachusetts on September 26th of 1785, she says misinformation began to be published about him. She checked with Congressman Jim Cooper, a Democrat in Tennessee, and he was proposing a House resolution for National Mule Appreciation Day. And it should have been a really simple thing to find a copy of the entire resolution through the records of the Library of Congress, but it wasn't. It was a joint resolution, Resolution 76 on the House side and Resolution 39 from Al Gore on the Senate side, and it was presented on January 22nd, 1985. And the records at the Library of Congress showed it had been sent to the Committee of the Judiciary in July of 1985. She made phone calls to the Library of Congress in the National Archives and checked in that. She checked with a professor at the University of Houston, a professor at the University of California, and the Reagan Library, trying to get information about Mule Appreciation Day. She said she'd been told that a resolution was passed in Congress claiming October 26, 1985, Mule Appreciation Day, and that President Reagan made a presidential proclamation. But when she tried to get that sourced, it wasn't coming up right. So she called Congressman Cooper's press secretary in D.C., Chris Carroll, and she told him that she wanted to validate all this information. And Mr. Carroll told her that he would send her a copy of the resolution. And William Davis, an archivist for the Center of Legislative Archives at the National Archives and Records Administration, informed her that the House records are sealed for 30 years, and he couldn't send her a copy. The Senate records are only sealed for 20 years, and he could send me a copy of the resolution presented by Mr. Gore. Since she assumed that the resolution would be the same, since a joint resolution, after all, was it was a joint resolution, she did manage to get a copy of the HJ Resolution 76 as well. Neither of the professors in Texas or the California Reagan historians had a record of a presidential proclamation for Mule Appreciation Day. There was no presidential proclamation making October 26, 1985, or any other day Mule Appreciation Day. When the resolutions were sent to the Judiciary Committee in July of 85, they died in committee, meaning that the resolutions were never passed. So about that illustrious group of mule men who had apparently started this whole darn thing, the Lynchburg Mule Traders Association, it was not true. It turns out that there's not much of an association either. She called the Moore County, Tennessee Chamber of Commerce, and a nice guy answered the phone and then pushed her off to his wife, and he said he'd never heard anything back from the missus, so since she called the Moore County Library, those helpful ladies were I was told they knew nothing about nothing, and I wanted to know more about mules, that she should call Columbia. And yeah, they may know mules and what's going on in Lynchburg, but they could find no information about the Lynchburg Mule Traders Association. And Mr. George Stone wrote, "I don't know anything about this, but I would not put it past the Jack Daniels advertising and Roger Brashear's doing this for publicity reasons."
Okay.
Yeah, so Jim Cooper said he's bullish on mules, and that's why he's sponsoring a measure in the House of Representatives. Thinks it's the most underappreciated animal in the United States.
Yeah.
Mule lovers in the United States are an untapped vein. People who love mules really love them. That's true.
Well, sure.
No, that's true.
Yes.
And he said it he assured his colleagues in Washington that October 26, 1785 was the date King Charles III of Spain sent George Washington 2 donkeys. One of the donkeys fell in love with a mare, and the first American mule was born. I'm sure it wasn't quite that simple. The idea for Mule Appreciation Day was proposed by the Jack Daniel Distillery in Lynchburg, Tennessee. Lynchburg was once a mule trading hub center.
Yes.
And so it makes sense that it would come out of there. Cooper said many of the people first thought his proposal was a joke, especially because they were advised to call a staff member named Chip Monk if they were interested in the idea. Another guy called up and said he would support it because his secretary, Bunny Rabbit, asked him. And Senators Jim Sasser and Al Gore Jr., both of Tennessee, were handling the bill in the Senate. One of the scores of newspaper articles that Deb found from 1985 about Mule Appreciation Day, the press had a field day with that one. Jack Daniels, not the elusive Lynchburg Mule Traders Association, was really behind it all.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so that makes total sense. And they said that, the resolution that started the whole thing was kind of worded to designate October 26, 1985 as Mule Appreciation Day. Whereas on October 26, 1785, the father of our country, George Washington, received the first jacks from King Charles III of Spain to breed the first American mules. Whereas mules bred from these jacks became a tradition of service to our nation in agriculture, mining, transportation, territorial explorations, war, and countless other endeavors. Whereas mules have been such an important part in the building of this country, and whereas this, in the bicentennial anniversary of the arrival of the first mules in America, now therefore be it resolved by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled that October 26, 1985, is hereby designated as Mule Appreciation Day. The President of the United States is authorized and requested to issue a proclamation calling upon the people of the United States to recognize October 26, 1985 as Mule Appreciation Day. The problem with this should be rather obvious. October 26, 1785 does not have much of anything to do with the arrival of the jackass, with the exception that Washington made a short note in his diary on that date. That he had received a letter from Thomas Cushing that the jack had arrived in Boston after having come on foot from Gloucester. But even if the jack had arrived in Boston on October 26th, it would have taken days for a letter to get to Mount Vernon. And mules arriving in America did not happen on that day. The jacks did. Right. The donkeys. So we wonder why this history is all convoluted like this. But as Deb says, well, I'm sure the news of there being no official Mule Appreciation Day may upset some. You know, and I know that every day is not only Mule Appreciation Day, but Donkey Appreciation Day as well. If you're lucky enough to own long ears. Happy Mule and Donkey Appreciation Day, y'all. I thought that was an amazing article. Oh. Yes, and I thought it was important that people know it because not everybody gets the magazine. And not everybody is privy, to all this information on mules and donkeys. And a lot of people even ask me, were they in the Bible? And the answer to that is yes. Yes. Yes, they were. Absolutely. And my favorite passage in the Bible about mules is in 2 Samuel 18, 9th verse, because it really portrays the humor of these animals right from the very beginning and how they humiliate us. And it says, and Absalom met the servants of David, and Absalom rode upon a mule, and the mule went under the thick boughs of a great oak, and his head was caught hold of the oak, and he was taken up between the heavens and the earth, and the mule that was under him went away.
I love that.
I love it. I just love it. I mean, we deal with that all the time, or get humiliated, try to find a new way with these guys. And like I've often said, when you get into an altercation with a mule, you'll seldom get hurt, but you will surely be set straight in a most humiliating way.
Chastity is your latest project, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And are you doing a diary on her as well?
Well, yes, actually I am. And that diary, it has been published beginning when I first got her at the end of March 2020.
Okay.
And when she came in, she was obese and she had a huge crest on her neck. And she also had a really bad infection in her udder and her teeth. They were the size of a grapefruit and leaking. And at first look, I thought maybe that a fold had just been pulled off of her because there was milky white fluid coming out of her teeth. But after about 2 weeks, I told my vet, I said, you better get back here because this really doesn't look like milk and it's not coming out. It's not stopping. And so he came out and he checked her, and she sure enough had a major infection in there. And so we put her on antibiotics and we hot packed her every day, twice a day. And we got it cleared up, but it took a long time to do that. And in the meantime, and this is the beauty of it too, I started out at first working her twice a week. But then after a few weeks, I realized that, from my experience with rock and roll, that I really didn't need to be that aggressive with it. Because core strength training, you don't want them to get stressed, because if they do, then they're going to get asymmetrical development. So I backed off and I just put her through the leading exercises in the elbow pull, and went ahead and walked her and led her through the hourglass pattern the way that I do. It has halts in it where we halt, square up, and then I change sides that I'm leading on so that everything gets developed symmetrically. And I always lead from the inside of the arcs. So I'll go around the short side if we're tracking left, and I will be on her left. And we go, the cones are set in the four corners of the arena with 2 cones in the middle, and I put ground rails there to walk over. And so what we do is we'll go around the short side, the first 2 cones on the short side, tracking left, turn in towards the gate cones, and stop halfway between the corner cone and the gate cone, square up, change leading sides, then go through that new arc and over the ground rails, stop between the gate cone and the next corner cone, stop, square up, change sides, and I just take her around, and what you're doing is you're basically drawing an hourglass in the sand. And it affects the internal pendulum in their body so that it swings first from one side on one arc, then you stop, it settles in the middle, then you start on the new arc, then it swings in the other direction. This is all an internal balance swing, is what it is.
Okay.
And so that's why you want to stop and square up and make it, make them standing in perfect posture so that internal pendulum can come to rest. And when you do the stop, you go ahead and reward them after you've set them up, and then you wait until they finish chewing. So they're actually standing there for 2-3 minutes. And that allows the whole body to settle in that posture. And then, you give the command, walk on. And when you do, what you do is you have the lead rope in the hand that's opposite where they are. You have their head at your shoulder, and on your other side is where you're grasping the lead rope, and you leave kind of a loop across your belly so that it's very loose going to their halter. And then you point in the direction of travel with your other hand, and if you're tracking left, you would be holding the lead rope in the left hand, pointing in the direction of travel with your right hand, And this keeps their head keeps them from crossing over in front of you or anything. It shows them which direction to go. And then you say, and to give them preparation, I'm going to give you a command. And then you go, walk on. And then you look down, just glance down at their foot and see which one they're leading with. And you match right foot to right foot, left foot to left foot, and you match their steps and you stay in sync with them. And you just go 1, 2, 1, 2 as you're walking along. And then when you want to stop again, then you go, and whoa. And you stop with your feet together. Then you turn to them, set them up, give them their oath, and then just stand there absolutely stock still and wait for them to finish chewing before you change sides and give the command on the other side and proceed forward. And if you're doing this correctly, the whole exercise is so meticulous that it takes, the whole workout is probably 15 minutes, but it's very intense. And so you just have to go around. If you've got an arena that's like 60 by 120, that's probably the smallest you would want to go. And that's what I start them in. And then I bump them up to an arena that is 60 by 180. And that expands the pattern. But I only go around the pattern once doing all these things. Then I cross the diagonal and I go around the pattern doing the same thing in the other direction. And then you're done. That's all the workout has to be. And you only need to do it once a week to start affecting that posture. You're changing their posture. Their habitual posture is out of good posture. But when you show them what is good posture and what is good walking and in good posture and moving in good posture, after a while you begin to see that their play patterns and their rest patterns change when they're in turnout. Moving in turnout the right way, which means that they're practicing when you're not there. And they learn to rest four square. No more dropping the hind hoof, hind foot, cocking the hind foot, or no more resting with their feet all straddled. They rest with the two front feet together and the two back feet together directly under their bodies with equal weight over all 4 feet. And this is wonderful, especially when you've got multiple animals. A lot of people think you got to ride them for a whole hour or 2 hours or 3 hours and make them do things over and over and over again. But when you do that, it's the same thing as when people drill you. After a while, you just get tired and you just don't want any more of it, and you won't listen and you won't be able to do what they ask because you're too tired. But this is just doing the right thing for a short amount of time, giving them the suggestions, repeating the suggestions, being consistent with the suggestions, and then over time, if you're willing to be patient about not getting on and riding and doing all this groundwork, it takes 3 to 6 months of this on the flat ground doing the hourglass pattern, then another 3 to 6 months of doing your hourglass pattern and then adding obstacles afterwards to start developing coordination. And at first you just go straight over the obstacles because a lot of them are afraid of them. So you got to deal with that first. And what you do is you coax them to the obstacle. If it's a bridge, for instance, you'll start walking in your posture towards the bridge, and then all of a sudden the rope gets tight around your belly, and you look on your shoulder, and they're not there anymore. They're holding back, and they're back behind you now, and they don't want to go, and I'm afraid of that. That is not something to be afraid of. This is something we are going to investigate together. So come on, and they go, no. And you keep the tension on the lead rope, but you don't pull.
Right.
You just keep the tension on it, and you face them. You go, no, this is not bad. Come on, you're going to come here. And, no, I can't do that. That's way too scary. And I just go, yeah, but you're forgetting something. And they go, oh, no, I'm not. And I said, yes, you are. I said, you're forgetting that I've got oats in this fanny pack around my waist. And I unzip the fanny pack and I get a handful of oats and I just drain them back into the fanny pack. And I say, if you come over here, you could have these. And then I just stand there and I wait until they do. I don't pull them towards the obstacle. This is the difference. I've got an article written about rewards, coaxing, bribing, and bribery, and treats, what the differences are. And it's how you use them and what you use. And when you're training, for instance, you need to use something that's healthy for them, that they can eat a lot of, and that they really like, so they'll keep working for them. And I find that carrots and apples and horse treats don't last long under those conditions.
Right.
But oats are really healthy for them, and you can monitor how many you give them in your hand each time, And so this is what you do. So they do come up to you, and then when they do, then you just square them up again, give them their oats, and then stand there for a minute, wait for them to chew, get in your position, walk on towards the bridge again, and they get a little closer, and then all of a sudden it's boop, and they're behind you again. And so then you turn around and you go, what's this? Now we're getting closer here, and this thing hasn't jumped out and bitten you. So why don't you just come on up a little further? Come on, we're going to investigate this. And you just repeat that whole process. And then when you get to the bridge, you go, look, see? And you bend down and you tap on the bridge and you throw the oats on the bridge and you go, now you eat those right off the bridge. And they kind of, you don't pull on them again. You just keep your rope taut so you've got a connection. And you let them do it. When they start to put their head down to eat it, then you loosen the rope. You let them go ahead and have it. And then you just go right across the bridge and any other obstacle with the same way, the same approach. And then once you've got them, so they're going, oh yeah, let's go investigate this and let's go investigate that. Because when we do, I get more out, and they're not stupid, and they love to be paid for their work. I mean, nobody's going to work for a pat on the head. I mean,
that's
I'm sorry,
right.
I certainly wouldn't. And so when they get to the point where they're going over all these obstacles really nicely, then you can come back and say, okay, if it's the bridge, for instance, they come up, let's go over the bridge. And they start getting a little exuberant about it, want to go over it too fast. So what you do is you walk up to the edge of the bridge and you ask them about, whoa, stop, square up, reward. Then what we do is we step up onto the bridge, ask them to put the two front feet on the bridge and square up in that position. Stop, reward, square up, reward. Then we ask them to put all 4 feet on the bridge, stop, square up, reward. This is getting them to listen to you too.
Right.
And this is getting them to learn how to stop when you give a command. Because you hear so many things about animals bolting on the lead rope or bolting in the bridle. And this will stop that. I guarantee it. And then here, when you get to the other end of the bridge and you want to put the two front feet down and leave the back feet down, that's when you realize how uncoordinated they really are, because they'll put their two front feet down all right, but they won't stop in that position because centrifugal force will force them to keep going forward, and they run right through you and off the bridge. So when that happens, you just keep your act together and you go, okay, let's start over again. And you go back to the bridge, the beginning, and you square up there. You go, this is what I want. 2 feet up, this is what I want. 4 feet up, this is what I want. Now we know that they fell off the last time. So now we're going to take the right hand and we're going to hold it right underneath that halter and put a little pressure there. So we go ahead, step off the bridge, kind of get those front feet going down there. But if they're really uncoordinated, they're going, Mom said to stop, so I'm stopping my front feet. But my back feet are going sideways off the bridge, and they're going to do a 180 and end up facing you. And then you go, oh, that was a really nice attempt. Now, no reward. That's not exactly what I asked, but it was a good try. Now we're going to try it again. And And this is where the halter makes all the difference in the world. The halter makes a lot of difference anyway in their attention on you. And I have found that rope halters with those knots in them put even as slight a pressure as it is, it still is a distraction because that pressure gets really obnoxious after a while.
Yeah.
And you can see what it would do if you just put your index finger underneath your ear and see how long you could stand having it there. After a while, it's just obnoxious. It's not that it's putting so much pressure. It's just distracting. And you want your animal's attention 100% on you. And especially in the situation that we're about to describe here, it's better to have those nylon halters. We don't need leverage to force these animals to do our bidding. What we need is their cooperation, and we need them to trust us to get that. So I use nothing but nylon halters. They're flat, and if you just put the palm of your hand now underneath your ear, you'll find that that pressure point is spread out, just like a nylon halter spreads out the pressure on their face. And so then it's not a distraction. They can give you that 100% attention. The other thing is the fit of the halter. Generally, those rope halters are either if they're tight enough around the throat latch, they're too loose around the noseband, or vice versa. And so in this situation, they would not be helpful at all. You want a nylon halter that fits lightly over their whole face, that has contact with their face everywhere. And so when you get to the end of the bridge and their hindquarters have come off sideways, that means they're having a really hard time balancing in that position. So what you do, if you know that that has happened, this is the third try, you go back to the bridge, go through the whole thing, stop before the bridge, square up, reward, 2 feet up, square up, reward, 4 feet up, square up, reward. But now when we get to the end of the bridge, we're going to go ahead and step out in front of them and hold the halter on both sides with your hands, and the lead rope will be in your left hand too. And you're going to get out in front of them, and you're going to give a couple of sharp little tugs on the right side and ask them to put the right foot down, and then put the pressure on the halter with both hands, stop, and then you kind of shake the other side a little bit, tugging the left foot down, and left foot comes down, you go, whoa, and if they're really off balance, they're going to be shaking a little bit, and you're going to help them hold that balance. And so you do that, and you talk to them, you go, this is good, this is really good. Good. And as you talk to them, they'll start to calm down again. They'll still be a little shaky, but they'll be calm enough so that you could keep the left hand with the rope, the lead rope, and the halter in your hand, and release your right hand and reach into the fanny pack and grab some oats and give them some oats right then and there and say, yes, this is what I want. And you don't ask them to square up when they're this shaky. Yeah. You have to wait for a couple of times through this where they're really solid in this position before you ask them to square up. And I've done this with Chastity too. And you'll see this in Chastity's challenges with the donkey, how I do this. And eventually too, I'll even ask them to stretch down in that position and ask them to take the oats from a lower level. But that's after I've done it several times, and they're getting much more stable in the balance. And then when you feel that the shaking is pretty much stopped and they're finished chewing, then you just let go, get into your position at their side, say walk off the end of the bridge, stop, square up, and reward again. And what this does is this teaches them, oh, she's helpful. She's helping me do this. This feels good. I can trust her. And I have had, as we go through these things, then you just break down every obstacle the same way. And all of this groundwork preps them to be lunged correctly in the right posture in the round pen. Because most of us will go into the round pen before I knew this stuff, I would go in the round pen and lunge them to quiet them down and get the kinks out and all of that. But I noticed once I was aware of posture, and correct ways of moving, that these guys were lunging, but they were moving away from the optical illusion of the fence, and they were leaning like a motorcycle instead of staying erect and bending through their rib cage and keeping equal weight over all 4 feet, which is what you need if you're going to ride them efficiently.
Right.
And if they're not going to end up, being sore in their body in any place, they have to move this way with equal weight over all 4 feet, keeping their body erect through all the movements, even when they have to tuck their butt underneath their themselves for a slide and stretch their spine and arc their neck to go into that slide and start walking with those front feet while the back feet are sliding. They got to be balanced through every single thing they do. And they learn through these different stages, and when you're done doing the leading training, first on the flat, when you can put the lead rope over their neck and do everything with hand signals and verbal signals alone without touching them.
Wow.
They have learned the movements, and you should be able to do them, or don't graduate them to the next stage. You just keep going until they do. And it takes 3 to 6 months on the flat to do just the balance and the forward movement. Then it takes another 3 to 6 months over the obstacles. And then another 3 to 6 months of lunging in good posture. And then we introduce the lunge line in the round pen so that we will be able to lunge them in the open without having them pull on the line and run off like so many do. But I've found that every disobedience is due to a lack of balance. It's thrown them off balance, what we're doing. Even when you're doing something as simple as mounting, you put your foot in the stirrup, you grab the saddle, and you pull it in one direction, and they go the other way to compensate for what you're doing.
Sure.
And then we get mad at them for moving. But they don't have the core strength to have you do that to them until they've gone through this stuff. And so you put them in there, and you tie the lunge line to the bit ring on the one side. They're still on their elbow pull. And you leave about 4 inches, and you put it under their chin and loop it under their chin to the other side and snap it to the ring on the other side. So if you have to tug on that lunge line, you're not going to pull that bit through their mouth. And you've got contact with where you are communicating from, and that's the bit. If it's a halter, it's higher on their face. It has a completely different effect on the way they bend their neck. They won't arch their neck and turn it around towards you. If you pull on a halter, then what it does is it causes them to brace against you, because there's not an equal triangle happening, like across the neck, and then the top of the triangle would be at the pole. The end of the triangle needs to be down by the corners of their lips, because if it's higher, then it makes them bend through the pole the wrong way, and it hurts, and they pull against it. I do have, I think, a training tip in there that exhibits this, and this is why I don't like bitless bridles. I don't like riding in halters, because it just perpetuates bad posture and a bad reaction. So you teach this when you're in the round pen to come from the lips. And the demonstration that I do is with the draft mule roll. I put the halter on him, and I try to pull his head around to me while I'm standing at his side with a halter, and he braces against me and pulls his head away. Then the next thing I did was I put my index finger in his mouth and gave him squeeze release pulls in his mouth. He arched his neck, and he just gave to me at the pole and brought his head completely around to my chest. So that told me just how this all works. See, it's, like I told you earlier, it's a matter of really listening to what the animal is trying to tell you.
Right.
Because they can't speak English. They have other ways of showing us, and if we are smart enough to pause and try different things to get the answers, we will get them. And so when you're lunging, the other thing that I learned too is when the animal is moving on a circle, if you pull on that lunge line while the outside front foot is down, then you are pulling them off balance because their body is putting all the weight to the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want them to stay on the circle around you, then you give a tug on the lunge line as that front foot goes into suspension. And then they're able to bring it up and cross it over onto the arc of the circle when it comes down. Can you visualize that?
Oh, yes. Ah.
So this is the cue that we give them, that they learn in the round pen. And the other thing I do too is I let that lunge line drag on the ground so that the sound of the lunge line going through the dirt won't spook them. It does it first and they bolt forward when they hear it. But that's why I lunge them in the round pen with that thing dragging on the ground, because I sure don't want that trouble in the open.
Right.
And so then when I'm giving them that cue, as the front leg comes up, I squeeze my hand closed. And it brings that outside front leg around onto the arc of the circle. And from repetition again, when you take them out in the open and you lunge them like that, you may have a couple of times when they go, I'm just going to run away. But you don't chase them, you just ask them to come back. And you keep your lunge line a little shorter for the duration, the lesson, and you lengthen it out with each lesson. That's not to say this isn't going to, happen,
Right.
but you still practice that cue on a shorter line.
Okay.
As the front foot comes up, you squeeze your hand closed to keep them on the circle. And as they get in touch with that, then they come, they submit more and more and more, and you can let your line out more and more and more. But you have to be patient enough not to make a big deal out of it. It was hilarious the other day because actually Chastity was hard to move around in the round pen, first of all. So I thought, well, okay, I don't want to be beaten on her butt or anything like that. And I've already done lunging with Wrangler. So I used Wrangler to help her keep going. And that's when I do a lot of this kind of stuff. If they don't want to go to the work area, I will take two to the work area. I take them both, because they get confidence from each other. And I don't care if I have to tie one up on the side while I work the other one. And then that way they can both get worked, and that's fine, because doing this, my workouts at best are probably only 30, 40 minutes. So I can get two animals worked in 30, 40 minutes, and that's fine with me. I can get 12 worked in an hour. So, just being organized about the way I'm doing it. So I started working Chastity and Wrangler together in the round pen, and he kept her moving and everything. And so, they really got to like each other. He thinks she's just grand anyway. He's now got a friend that's as big as he is, and he doesn't have to stay by himself in turnout anymore after 3 years of being that way. So, and he gets really obnoxious when she's in heat. So we decided maybe that 7 days we just separate them in turnout, and do that. So he gets the first half of the day, she gets the second half in turnout.
There you go.
So you just kind of make adjustments, I have graduated them. First I rode them in the round pen, and we learned being light in the bridle, and they got light in the bridle, so I graduated them to the open arena, and this was just a couple weeks ago. And so the first lesson they all did just fine and everything. But I thought that Wrangler ran off in the lunge line, and I thought, well, he needs an extra lesson on the lunge line then. I just brought him back and put him on a shorter line, and we ended that way the time before. But this time I thought, okay, well, I'll give him the option to do a little better. So I kept letting it out, and he was doing really well, and then he got a whole lot of line, and he just took off on me. And he ran all the way down to the opposite end of the arena, and I thought, well, Chastity's up at the other end, so this is not a problem. So I always tell people, well, just show them your oats and stand there and don't go chasing after them. I showed him the oats, and the little punk reached underneath the fence and grabbed a tumbleweed and showed it to me.
Oh, man.
I had to laugh. I just said, okay, I get it. really don't care if you get the oats or not, okay? You one up to me this time. So I'll walk over there and get you. And I must have taken 3 steps towards him. And then he ran all the way to the other end of the arena and stopped over by where Chastity was tied. And I went, okay, we're going to play it like that, huh? So I turned around and walked over there because I knew he wasn't going to leave her. So I walked, and she was tied outside. I always tie them outside, not inside, where I get in trouble. And so I walked over there, and he still had that tumbleweed hanging out of his mouth. And I just said, okay, Wrangler, and I grabbed it, and I yanked it out of his mouth, and I threw it over the fence. I reached in my fanny pack, and I said, now take these.
What a character. Oh, my God.
And then I took him back to where we were lunging, kept him on a shorter line. He lunged. He did fine. I didn't let him out too far. And so I quit the lunging there, went ahead, took him back over near Chastity, put the lunge line up, walked him a little ways away from her, but not too far, mounted him, went through the hourglass pattern, and he did great. Lighten the bridle, wonderful, But you got to be willing to negotiate.
Yeah. Now you're going to have to do a cartoon about these 2 characters,
Oh, I know. They are so funny. And I got 2 mini donkeys, too. And I kind of do a little bit of a cartoon kind of thing with photographs with them. My post is called Another Augie and Spud's Adventure. And that's also a diary that I've been keeping on the mini donkeys. And they've gone through their whole training process and everything. But I write their diary from their point of view. And just to give you an example, the latest one that I just did, we were working on our irrigation system, and we had backhoes out there and big piles of dirt. And I always lock them together. I would take them together. They like doing things together, and that's fine. I don't have any problem. I've gotten them to drive single, double, all of that stuff already, and they're fine. We decided to go out for a walk and go see all this irrigation, the construction stuff. And so one of the pictures I've got is of me and Augie going over the top of this pile of dirt while Spuds is going around the bottom. And it says, you take the high road and I'll take the low road and I'll get there before you guys. And then I got Augie, that's Spuds on the bottom, and I got Augie saying, oh, Spuds, don't give us that. You're just lazy.
Okay, Meredith. So how can people get a hold of the DVD on rock and roll and all your other books and DVDs?
You could go to my website, and we have video on demand under the training heading there, that if you don't want to buy anything, but you want to see it, and then you can go to our training, video on demand, and we have things broken up into my RFD TV shows, which are under Training Mules and Donkeys. And in the case of the rock and roll documentary, it's under documentaries, and it's under Those Magnificent Mules. And then if you would like to buy the DVDs or my books, you can go to www.lucky3ranch.com and look in the store. And there are a lot of other headings in there, too, that give you all of different information about the ranch, about what we do. When tours resume, there's a section on tours as well. But all of those entities are right there on the homepage at lucky3ranch.com. And if you'd like to call me, you can call 1-800-816-7566.
Meredith, thank you for coming on to Mule Talk, and happy National Mule Day to you.
Happy Mule Appreciation Day to you too, Cindy. I love talking with you.
Oh, thank you. And we'll talk soon. Hold
Sounds
on.
good.
The perfect gift for your mule friends is Metal Art by Sandy. Sandy has captured the beauty and unique style in all of her metal artwork. Sandy carefully handcrafts your metal art to the likeness of your mule, donkey, or horse. Orders are promptly created by Sandy, wrapped, and then shipped. Want a ranch sign crafted for your driveway or barn? Metal Art by Sandy Sandy. Go to metalartbysandy.com. Metal Art by Sandy is also on Facebook. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or a sponsor, send me an email, Cindy, C-I-N-D-Y, at everycowgirlsdream.com. Gotta go. My mule is looking for me.